Lately, it seems like I've been mostly making fun videos like the car crushing or dropping the plate on different objects, or the scrapyard experiment videos where we put different things into car engines and see how long they run. But today I wanted to make a little bit more of an informative video and show you guys some of the different aluminum grades that we produce and bale, and kind of explain to you what the differences are in those grades. And I think the easiest thing to do will be just go down the rows and explain each one individually, because each row is a separate grade of aluminum. So this first row is our irony extrusion, or our 95.5, and basically that stands for it's 95% aluminum and up to 5% contamination, and it's all extruded material, which means it's going to be a 6000 series, a 6063, or a 6061. And if you look at this material closely, you'll see that it's got contamination like nuts and bolts and screws. And the reason why we have this as a separate grade is because it's worth more as a 6000 series, but not quite as much as a more cleaner package, because it does have that contamination. Next to it is our aluminum siding. That's an easier grade to understand because it's exactly what it sounds like. It's aluminum siding, gutters, etc. off of houses and buildings. And a lot of this material comes from contractors or demo jobs. And this material is primarily made up of all 3000 series aluminums, which brings a premium over some of the other grades, because this material is ready to go directly to a primary aluminum mill where it can be melted down and made into new products. The next one is our 1010 extrusion package. The difference between this one and the first is this one has no contamination. The 1010 name stands for 10% painted, which is the only contamination, and 10% 6061. So this package primarily consists of 6063 aluminum with a little bit of 6061 mixed in. This next row is our old sheet aluminum, and basically out of all the clean aluminums, if it doesn't fit into one of these other categories or our MLC package, which I'll show you in just a second, it's going to end up here. And this package is also allowed up to 5% contamination. So the mill that this material will go to will actually shred this material before they melt it, and they'll send us a report on what it recovers. So if it recovers at more than 5% contamination, there will be repercussions or deductions, and we won't get the full value because we're selling it based on a 5% or less contamination. And this package is going to be mixed with all different types of alloys, and you can see if you look closely, there's material in these bales that would probably fit into one of these other categories, but because when it comes to us, it's very mixed and it's very labor intensive to separate every little piece, so we don't do that. Next, we have our aluminum radiators, and that's exactly what they sound like. These are aluminum radiators out of automobiles or an industrial application or air conditioning units, and these should be free of contamination. They don't have the plastic tanks on them, and there should be no steel left on any of these, and they primarily only go to a secondary mill. And then next to those are our aluminum and copper radiators. And so these radiators are worth considerably more than just the aluminum radiators because they have copper tubes in them. So this material has a lot more value based on the copper recovery, because copper is worth a lot more than aluminum. And that material primarily comes out of air conditioning units. And then over here we have our painted 6063, and this is a new production painted 6063. So all of this blue material you see is basically brand new material that was defective or unusable, and so it was sent to us to be recycled. It's all the exact same alloy, it's all 6063, and the only contamination in those bales is that paint. The next row over is the MLC, which I talked about just a second ago. The MLC basically stands for mixed low copper aluminum, and that means it's going to be mixed alloys with no contamination, no paint, no steel, no plastic, etc. And it's basically a mixed package because it's not worth the time for us to separate every alloy individually. So there's going to be 5000 series, 3000 series, and basically if it's new production aluminum with no paint, no contamination, it can go into this package. And then lastly, right next to it, we have our insulated aluminum, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's insulated aluminum wire. And so this material will go to a chopper who will grind it and separate out the plastic from the aluminum. When this material is stripped, we call it EC wire, electrical conductor wire, and it is a premium high grade aluminum that's probably worth more than any of the other aluminums I just showed you, but it is not worth the labor and the time for us to manually strip all of this wire. You might be wondering why some of this wire like this is in here and it looks bare with no insulation, and that's because it has a steel core wire run through it. We call it ACSR, and it also has to go to the chopper where they grind it up, and then they can magnet separate out all of the steel, and they're worth about the same. So we just bale them together because we don't get a ton of this material. It takes us quite a while to get enough to sell a whole load. And then over here we've got our new production bare 6063, and so this is similar to that blue pipe, except this is all bare with no paint, but it's all 6063 with no contamination. And then over here is just some of our copper wire bales, and then this is a aluminum copper radiator end bales. And so this is all of those radiators that I showed you baled over there with the ends cut off, because those are clean with no steel. All of these plates are steel, and so we cut those off, and other recycling companies that we purchased those radiators from cut them off because they're worth considerably more with the steel off of them. But this still has a fair amount of value because you can see all of the copper that's still in here. And I almost forgot one of the most common types of aluminum, and that is your aluminum cans. You can see we have ours stored into our makeshift dry storage that we are using an old 53-foot trailer for. We've cut the landing gear and the axles out from under it. And the reason we've done that is aluminum cans and a couple other grades need to stay completely dry. So when these get delivered to the mill, they do a moisture report, which basically tells you the percentage of moisture in the bales. And if it's over a certain threshold, then the cans are worth less than if they were completely dry. But it's pretty straightforward in the trailer here. It's just stacks of 3 all the way to the front, and then when the trailer is full, we know we have a full tractor trailer load ready to go. So on this load, we're basically lacking 2 bales. You can see the weights are spray painted on the bales, and the can bales typically weigh somewhere between 1,000 and 1,200 pounds. The term we use for cans a lot is UBCs, and that stands for used beverage containers. But typically these are going to go to a mill where they're going to be shredded, remelted, and more than likely made back into sheet to make aluminum cans. And the cool thing about aluminum cans is from when they're on the store shelf and you buy them, consume them, and recycle them, they could get back on the store shelf in as little as 60 days. So that's a pretty quick turnaround time for a recycled product. And then just like the aluminum cans, we use these other trailers for materials that need to stay dry. Just ignore these cardboard boxes here. They're full of some other material that the guys put in here just so they didn't get rained on. But all of this aluminum is 5052. This is another premium grade aluminum, and the mills that this goes to typically are pretty strict about moisture, so they do not want any water at all. So same thing, as soon as these are baled, we get them weighed, put into inventory, and they get stored in this trailer until they're ready to go. There's a few grades that are like that. We do that with the cans, the 5052 and our 3003 aluminum, and then if we get some other select grades that need to stay indoors, we'll keep those inside also. Well, I hope I didn't make this overly complicated. I tried not to use too many scrap or recycling specific terms. I did try to tell you the names and the reasons why those names are what they are. But I hope you guys found this interesting. Some people think that scrap yards just buy aluminum and sell aluminum. They don't understand or realize that there are so many different grades or alloys, and all of that makes a big difference when it comes to recycling properly. But I'm hoping to start mixing in more of this informative content with the fun content. So if you guys have any ideas about what you want to learn more about around the scrapyard, leave a comment below and let me know what you want to see, and I'll do my best to get to it. But as always, thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next one.